Hello, I'm Greg Campbell.
And I'm Jeff Kaplan.
And you're listening to the Urban Advantage Podcast,
the official voice of the University of North Texas at Dallas
and the Southern Dallas community.
Welcome back to the Urban Advantage Podcast here on the campus of UNT Dallas. I am Jeff Kaplan, here with my co-host Greg Campbell, and we've got a big show today, an important show based on DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. I think everybody knows that these young men and women, known as dreamers, and their protections right now are under attack, under threat from the current administration, which could ultimately change the entire direction of their lives. So we've got a really great discussion here today. Greg, let me bring you in here before we introduce our guests.
Well, Jeff, I'm so glad that we're doing this today because so many of our students are first-time college students here at UNT Dallas, but they're also dreamers. They have come to this country as young men and women and have grown up in our country and have enrolled in our university, and they find themselves at this current time wondering if they're going to be able to finish their degree, get a job, be able to live their lives out as productive citizens here in the United States. That's why it's so important that we've taken on this issue. It not only affects our university here at UNT, but it affects our community. So this is something that we are, fulfilling our mission to be the voice of UNT Dallas, but also to be a voice of Southern Sector.
This is a university that just went over 4,000 in enrollment this fall and 200 DACA students. So that's a sizable number, and that's just a microcosm of our surrounding community. So this is a hugely important topic right now that affects so many people in this area, Greg. And the thing that gets me is we can debate how they got here, when their parents came, the means they came, why they came. The fact is they are here. And let's get into introduce our two guests here today. We have junior political science major here at UNT Dallas, Roberto Garcia. Roberto is 20 years old. He's been here since he was 4 years old in this country, not at UNT Dallas. He'll be out of here in 4 years. It won't take him that long to get out of school. Roberto wants to be a teacher, okay? He wants to be a teacher. And like I said, a junior political science major, been here since he's 4 years old. Sitting next to Roberto is Dan Jividan. He is a adjunct professor at the UNT Dallas College of Law in downtown Dallas, now in the beautiful Law Center at 106 South Harwood, downtown Dallas, the old City Hall building. And he is an expert in immigration law, recently started his own law firm to really focus in on immigration law. So with that, let's jump into this, Greg.
The docket that we refer to is, as he said at the outset, is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Really what it was is back in 2012, June of 2012, President Obama issued an executive order that really kind of started this program. To be clear, deferred action and giving employment authorization to people who receive deferred action is something that's been happening for a very long time. What this did, though, was it made sure that it drew kind of a bright line standard for ICE officials to look at.
ICE is what? You're going to throw away around those terms. I want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about.
And thank you, because I do that a lot. It's my former government attorney side of me. ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And so really what the policy at its root is making sure that ICE, which has a limited budget that Congress gives it, focused its resources on the proper individuals and drew this line noting that people that fell within what we like to refer to as the dreamers section of society were not an actual resource. And so if you met a number of requirements that Roberto, for example, does, it not only meant that ICE wasn't going to seek to remove those individuals, but also provided an opportunity for them to apply to a different agency under DHS, which is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. They would apply there, get their deferred action if they met the requirements, and then they would be given work authorization. That continued since then.
Then you mentioned that some requirements. So
yes.
It's not everybody that came here as a child can qualify as a dreamer and maybe potentially get some DACA status. So there are some requirements.
There are, and there are requirements that are targeted towards the dreamers. The requirements are that you came here before the age of 16. You had to have been here on or before that June date in 2012, but also you had to have obtained your GED or a high school diploma, and you couldn't have been convicted of multiple misdemeanor offenses or a felony offense or significant misdemeanors such as drinking and driving. So they are people that have gone to school, haven't committed crimes, and really had no choice over being brought here as a child.
So basically, these were good kids.
Exactly.
Kids that, had been in our society and were contributing to the society, going on with school and doing what they needed to do.
Exactly.
And there is, I would like to say, there is a misconception out there that is perpetuated in a lot of instances by people in government, in high office, that these are people who are not good people who should be removed, people who are criminals and drug dealers and so forth. That is not the case. And that's why I'm really glad that we have Roberto here today to shed some light on this, because I'll tell you what, Roberto speaks better English than a lot of Texans I know, all right? I mean, there's some people out there I can't. Roberto.
You speak English in Texas?
I don't know what they speak, like something, but Roberto, again, for all intents and purposes, he's American, 4 years old. So
thank you, Jeff. No, yeah, and I agree. First and foremost, I want to say how grateful I am to be here with you guys today. I want to thank UNT Dallas for giving us the opportunity to voice our opinions and to raise these concerns that are of issue to our community and to communities all over the United States. As you guys previously mentioned, the kids, such as myself, that qualify for this program, that have benefited from this program for so long, if you were to tell us that we were not American, we would be very confused. And so when you have people in office, people in the executive branch, bureaucrats, that deem us as un-Americans, as criminals, or any other term that is used to be like looked down upon us, I think that's very incorrect to do that. We've been here since a very young age. We've done things that I consider to be American, that I don't think separate us from a kid that was born here. To us, this is a country that we know and love, and it's honestly the only country that we know.
If I could, one point is, these aren't only good kids that you don't have to just meet the requirements that make them good kids, but we've got to remember that most of these people everybody did not have the choice over whether they were going to come here with the parents or not. I mean, Roberto, you tell me, when my dad was in the military and we were moving, I didn't have a say in it. Did you have any say over where you guys were going when you first came here?
Oh, absolutely not. I thought we were going to the store. I'm 4 years old.
You went out to the store and you showed up in Texas.
And I showed up in a whole new country. So I was 4 years old. I got on a bus with my younger sister, who was 1 at the time. I don't understand how that whole process came about. I just know that I took a nap. I wake up. I'm in a new country. I know nobody. I had no say or choice over this.
So you came here with your parents?
No, so my parents, my father came about a year before the rest of us moved, and I think that's the story with a lot of these families. The dad usually crosses the Mexico-U.S. border some way. There's multiple ways in which people have come to this country seeking job opportunities, and my father, fortunately, was one of those people who was able to take that risk and cross the border safely. As we know, every year there are casualties along the U.S.-Mexico border. And so I'm very blessed for my father to have been able to take that journey. And so my dad was in the United States for about a year. He was working in construction, he was working in welding, and he was sending money back to us. I was born in Durango, Mexico, and the city that I was born in was not economically flourishing. There was a lot of poverty, there still is. And so we were very fortunate to have my father working over here and sending as much as he could back. About a year after he came over, when you have a family, you seek that unity. So we're a family of 5. My older brother Max, my younger sister America, my father, and my mother. A year after my father came, he sent for my mom and my brother. They crossed the border as well. A couple weeks later, my sister and I came over, and we were in this new country that we didn't know. But I guess to reiterate, we didn't have a choice.
Your
in
sister's
getting
name
here.
is America.
Yeah, it's after the soccer team, not the country. There's,
Okay.
there's a very popular Mexican soccer team named America, but it just so happens that we came to America. And
So when you came to the United States, I'm going to assume probably 15 years ago or
yes,
so.
like 15 years ago today.
15 years ago
December.
today?
Yes.
Okay.
For real.
Yeah.
So
Today.
Dan, when,
How
when,
about that?
when Roberto came to the United States 15 years ago, what was his status?
Well, at that point, his status would have been no status, really. He had no legal status to be here, which, I mean, that's the simple answer to your question, is no status at all. And he remained that way, really. Technically speaking, even though he has that DACA status, I'm sure he's heard the government, it's a term of art, so to speak, that it lets you stay here, it lets you work here, but even that's not an actual status at this point in time.
So somebody who comes over as a child, in your case, Roberto, at 4 years old, you just came, you didn't know where you were, you didn't know why you had come, you came with your sister. And did your mother come over at the same time?
My mother came over with my older brother, who was 10 years old at the time when he crossed the border. They came over a couple weeks before we did.
Okay, so just you and your sister
Yes.
make this trip on the bus.
And I think my grandmother was with us at the time, if I
Okay.
remember correctly. We
Kind of frightening.
Oh, absolutely. As a kid, you see it kind of as an adventure. I mean, my grandma's buying us candy at every stop. I'm looking out the window. But looking back on it now, it was a very dangerous trip that we took. There is a lot of crime along the U.S.-Mexico border, and we hear of buses getting hijacked all the time by different individuals. And so looking back on it now, it was a very unsafe decision that we took, that my parents took, to send us over through a bus. But fortunately, we made it.
So I want to ask you a question, because this is something that's really important. I'm an immigrant. Yes. My family came from Jamaica, okay? And I was first generation in this country, so I was born here. But because my parents were immigrant, I was always looked upon as an immigrant. So I was looked upon as different. In growing up, having people hearing of your story, how did you feel? How were you looked upon? How were you labeled? What did people consider you?
It's very tricky. So when I got here at 4 years old, up until I want to say the beginning of high school, I was trying to learn the English language. Communication is a big barrier for the ESL community, the English as a second language community, which I'm a part of. And so if you don't speak the language, it's very easy to get labeled. It's very easy for people not to understand you, not to understand your story or the struggles that you've gone through, especially young kids. And so going through elementary and middle school and learning the language, I was not able to communicate effectively with the adults around me, the educators around me, of who I am, where I come from, and my story. But a few years down the road, as my English got better through high school, I don't think that I had a label on me. I feel like other people saw me just as American as they are. I'm very proud of my Mexican roots. I'm very proud of where I'm from. But I'm also proud of being a contributing member to society here in the U.S. for the last 15 years. And so I don't think people had a label on me because I do the same things that any other 20-year-old American kid born in the United States with a Social Security
We'll excuse you
does.
of that.
Yeah. I watch football. I love burgers. I love the gym. I feel like I do everything that everybody else does. The only thing that separates me is that my parents decided to move here in the hopes for a brighter future for me and my siblings, and for them there is a label on them. People see them as criminals for entering the country illegally, and ourselves, streamers, they see us as criminals for entering the country illegally, when all we were seeking was, a brighter future.
If I could, I'd make 2 points, which is, one, that's one thing I tell people all the time, which is, look, all these parents were doing was exactly what any good parent does, which is try to make a better life for their family. But two, one very critical point to this debate that frustrates me so much when I hear politicians, the media, et cetera, talk about this stuff. They always talk about, well, you got to do it legally. You needed to wait in line, wait your turn. But what the American public doesn't understand is that first, you've got to have a family member in the vast majority of cases. To come here legally from Mexico, you first have to have a family member that can file a petition for you. But even then, let's say Roberto's dad had a U.S. citizen brother who filed a petition for him back in 1999. As of today, as we are still speaking right now, that petition filed in 1999 is still at least 2 years away from actually having a visa available. I'm not kidding you. The wait for many of the categories from Mexico exceeds 20 years. That's not a line. That's not a realistic
So,
thing.
Dan, is that the case for every country, or is it just Mexico is singled out? So if somebody was trying to immigrate here from Ireland or immigrate here from Spain or France, what's the status there?
No, it's going to be different. You have countries that are considered chargeability areas, okay? And then you've got on the visa bulletin, a new one is issued every single month by the Department of State. There are specific countries that are singled out, which include, basically it's the countries that you have the most people coming to the United States from: China, India, Mexico, the Philippines. And I'm trying to remember if there's another country that's on there. And then there's another category that's all other chargeability areas. But, Philippines, they have the same sort of weight. The point is when everybody's talking about do it the legal way, well, provide a real legal way, not a way where people who filed petitions back when I was first getting my driver's license still aren't coming to the United States.
Exactly. And that's what I like to think about sometimes as well, is what would have happened if my parents were to have filed a petition through our current immigration system, quote unquote, the right way. I would have been born in a country where there's little to no opportunity for a brighter future, where there is little to no opportunity for me to contribute to my community and help in one way, shape, or form. And so I hate to think what would have been the future of my siblings and I and my family had we stayed in the country that we were born into. And so I commend my parents for being brave enough to make that decision, to come into a country that they knew little of, against all odds, and try to provide us with a brighter future, even if it was not the wrong way.
Guys, what would happen if DACA went away in its current form? What would happen to Roberto? What would happen to other people who are
800,000 dreamers in this country right now, 800,000. So, let that sink in a little.
Here's from my perspective, it's a very interesting question. I was listening, to refresh my memory, to the Supreme Court oral arguments earlier today when I was coming here from the DACA case. What would it mean? It would mean that probably all these people who have DACA, I don't think that the day the Supreme Court's decision came out that they would lose that status, but I think that if it were to go the way the Trump administration wants it to, that when the DACA expired, it would be expired. My hope, and it's not worth the fears, et cetera, that these dreamers are going to have to face, but my hope is that if that happens, it's finally going to force our Congress to actually pass legislation. I mean, the alternative is that the Trump administration has to basically say, forget it, we don't care, take it away. And then for Congress to just sit on their hands. And frankly, the hope would be that it would actually force real legislation that not only gave dreamers like Roberto legal status, but fix so many of the other problems in our immigration system.
Roberto, what does that mean? What do it mean to you personally?
Yeah, as a dreamer, if the DACA program were to be terminated, which is a fear that we all live in constantly, as a dreamer, from the moment that you consciously understand that you're here illegally, you live in fear. You live in doubt. You live in uncertainty. You go to school. You don't know if your parents are going to be there when you come back. So this anxiety that we've lived in, we've become accustomed to it. And we've learned how to work with it, and we learn how to use it to our advantage, to work harder. But if the DACA program were to end, that means that the 800,000 individuals such as myself will not be able to work legally in this country. I live now in a household with just my mother and my sister, and economically I'm a large provider in the household. I'm currently employed as a project manager at a software development company named Cratebind, where I'm fortunate to be able to make enough money to pay for my tuition, to help my mother out with rent, to pay for insurance, any medical bills that may come about. So if the DACA program were to be terminated, the economic aid that I'm able to provide to my mother will not be there any longer.
You pay taxes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, do I? Yeah.
Yeah.
Not only that, but the uncertainty of what will I do with a degree in a country in which I cannot work legally anymore is there as well.
That's the real terms of this, and you put it into real dollars, and you're working at a software company right now while you're in college. You want to be a teacher. You take away DACA. Roberto can't go to Dallas Independent School District and apply for a job to be a teacher. What's he left with? So he's going to college. He grows up here basically as an American, and what, he's left to go work in the field somewhere? Is that the jobs to go mow someone's yard? I mean, is that what we're doing to young people in this country who came here as young children? So we're gonna take a quick break, pick it back up, because I also want to talk about the psychological effects that this must have in the Hispanic community of the threat of DACA going away and what that means. So we'll get back into that when we return on the Urban Advantage.
Perched on a hilltop overlooking the downtown Dallas skyline, the University of North Texas at Dallas is the only public four-year university in the city of Dallas. Serving the #1 job market in America, UNT Dallas is ranked #1 in Texas and #6 nationally as the most affordable university. We as Trailblazers believe that every student should have the opportunity to earn a college degree regardless of their economic background, and we deliver. For more information, visit untdallas.edu. Blaze your trail.
Hey, Roberto, we've been talking about some of the issues about being a dreamer and some of the anxiety it brings about. Talk to us a little bit about that personal anxiety. You said about, this sounds crazy, but you may come home and your parents may not be there.
Yeah, that unfortunately, that's a fear that a lot of the youth in the nation have to live with. It's an anxiety and a fear that I don't wish on anybody. Growing up, me and my brother understood the risks that we took and the risks that our parents took every day by doing the most simplest things that a lot of us take for granted. You go out for groceries, you may not come back home if you get caught in an ICE raid. Your parents go to work, they might not come home. And so it is a fear that the DACA community lives in almost every day, and it's very impactful. It's very unfortunate, but at the same time, it has allowed a lot of us dreamers, a lot of the people that are beneficiaries of the DACA program, to learn how to cope with that fear, to use it to where, because you're in this country and because your status in this country is so uncertain, every day you learn how to live with that, and every day you learn how to use it to fuel you to work even harder, to take advantage of every single opportunity that we have. Back where I was from, back where I'm from in Durango, Mexico, simple things such as public education, transportation, uniforms, the 2 meals that they give you a day are not free. And so because of the fear of going back, we learn how to take even more advantage of all of those things that are provided to us freely through like public school districts or programs as such. But just to reiterate, it's frightening. It's anxiety that a lot of 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds should not be living with.
And I'd like to play off of that even beyond DACA. DACA is just a part of the overall sort of culture right now that is out there with the Trump administration in 2016. We are seeing detention camps on the border and in many states. People don't even realize in many states where we're separating families. So there's that fear. Our own professor here, Dr. Jerry Burkett, did a study last year on heavily Hispanic school districts throughout Texas and the effect that the Trump immigration policies are having on students and how principals and teachers are trying to help students sort of calm those anxieties so that they can actually study in school and make good grades. Since 2016, is there a greater fear? Is there almost a wariness? Almost you have to watch your back in a way?
Oh, absolutely. I was a senior in high school my first semester as a senior in high school in 2016 when Trump was elected president. We have kids in our school and all throughout the Dallas Independent School District that have just arrived to this country from El Salvador, from Mexico, from Honduras, from Guatemala. A lot of these kids did not come back to school for 2 to 3 weeks in fear that because of this new administration, which bloated of sending them all back, they fear that. These kids were missing out on free public education because of an administration that was installing fear-mongering tactics among U.S. constituents, and unfortunately, it was impacting my friends and the students in my community directly.
Yeah. And Dan, we know that hate crimes are up in this country. We've seen a shooter who, from not too far away here in Allen, drive all the way out to El Paso and shoot up a Walmart, and we now know why he did that, because of people like Roberto. Have you seen in your
Hatred
practice
for people like Roberto?
Yeah. I mean, are you seeing, are you seeing that consistently, a rise and just in the rhetoric, just the hateful rhetoric that even turns certain people who may not have had opinions one way or another, giving them the reason to have negative opinions? Oh,
yeah. I mean, the reality is that after the election, I heard one comedian on Saturday Night Live say, hey, we didn't realize how appreciative we were of all of the people with racist thoughts out there that were keeping them to themselves, because all of a sudden, this election happens and people started thinking, hey, it's okay. And to the talk about the fear, people got to realize that there was a person named Tom Homan, who was the acting director of ICE for quite a while after Trump took office. And it made me sick to work for an agency where this guy was out there, because at the time I worked as the deputy chief counsel at ICE. But this guy's out there and he's responding to questions like, should people be in fear with, yes, he literally said, yes, these people should be afraid right now. I mean, it was, the problem is they thought that this rhetoric would, I think they thought the rhetoric would stop and stem the tide of people coming up from these countries like Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, all of which are very, very violent countries. And the reality is it stopped it for a moment, but now we keep seeing these caravans coming up, and it turns out that the rhetoric alone, at least didn't stop it.
And I think that the people that are purposefully spreading this rhetoric, the people that oppose DACA, I think that they do this out of fear of the future and the way in which dreamers may change this country. You have people who were born in this country who have been here for 30, 40, 50 years and have never gotten their college degree. They have amounted to almost nothing. And they're afraid that a kid who comes into this nation not speaking the language in which Americans communicate gets here, and within a span of 15 or 20 years, gets their bachelor's, gets their master's, finds himself in a career in which they never envisioned themselves in. The people that are using this hateful rhetoric against dreamers, they're afraid of our future and what we can become and the way in which we can impact this country progressively. And so they will use fear-mongering tactics to try and stop our growth and our future here in this country any way, shape,
Roberto,
or form.
why do you think people are afraid of dreamers?
I think people are afraid of dreamers because people are afraid of change. I think they're afraid of the new ideas that we bring. They're afraid of our progressive mindsets. They're afraid that we might steal their jobs, which we work every day super hard for. They're afraid that we're going to change the way in which the country currently operates, which I don't believe it to be the case. We want to be contributing members to this country. We want to be the teachers and the doctors and the policemen and the U.S. Armed Force members that make this country even greater, so that people that are born into the situations in which we were born into can benefit from this country and continue to make it great the right way. But they're afraid that we're going to steal these opportunities from them, which is not the case.
Fear is very powerful, right? It's a very strange human characteristic to me, that people are afraid of others who are not like them, of them doing better than what they have done.
Right.
And it's a very strange concept, and I think we're seeing that play out right now to a degree we haven't seen in decades.
What's remarkable, though, is there you have those people that have that fear. But the remarkable thing about this battle over DACA right now is the vast majority of Americans are in favor of some sort of legal status, providing a pathway to legal status and citizenship for the Dreamers. Good luck even finding a politician out there that says that they aren't actually for it. And that's why one of the issues that's up before the Supreme Court right now isn't the question. Everybody seems to concede that at some point DACA was always a temporary thing, and nobody on either side is actually claiming that it can't be rescinded, but their claim is, hey, the reason and rationale that was given, and this is one of the two issues that's up there, was not a real reason and rationale, and that rationale was that it's illegal. It was an illegal thing for the administration to do. And the people arguing for the Dreamers, one of them pointed out, look, if they want to say, hey, we don't like this program, we don't want to help the Dreamers, that would have been a real reason. But instead, the Trump administration, knowing how detrimental it would be to them politically, hid behind the idea that it was illegal instead of just saying, we don't want to help the Dreamers. Because in fact, publicly, as Justice Kagan pointed out during the oral arguments, Trump himself has said, Dreamers, you're safe with me, you know. Why?
He employs illegals.
Exactly.
People that are legal undocumented workers, he employs them.
That's exactly right. And so, you know, people want this pathway, and the Trump administration, that's what basically I think the people realize that, hey, if we can win on this issue and make them give a reason that isn't, quote, it's illegal, because nobody really buys that and they're trying to hide behind it, then either they win on it and people keep the DACA, or it forces the Trump administration and Congress to do their job.
So why is it, though, Dan, the reports coming out after those hearings a few weeks ago was that the court is apparently ready to side with the Trump administration and end DACA? I mean, why? I mean, I guess it should make sense because it makes no sense.
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, look, we have a divided court, and people may not remember this, but the state of Texas had brought an action against DAPA, which didn't really last very long. It was similar. It had to do with parents. But when that was appealed up to the Supreme Court, it was after Justice Scalia had passed, and so the court had 8 justices on it. And because it had 8 and it was a 4-4 decision, the Fifth Circuit's decision stayed in place. I think people are worried that given the makeup of the court right now, that they're going to side with the Trump administration. It'll be interesting because the first issue, honestly, the issues are kind of boring in the sense that the first issue is a very legal question of whether the court can even step into this sort of debate, or whether it's just Congress and the president who have the discretionary authority. You know, I listened to the oral arguments, and it seems that you have a pretty divided court on this issue that could even possibly remand for further fact-finding, which would delay and keep DACA in place.
Yeah, and it's just an amazing thing to me in the sense that here we have Roberto. He's going through college. He's working at a software company. He wants to be a teacher. He's going to be a tax-paying, person who is serving society in a way that we would want all of our kids to grow up and do. And yet if we end DACA, we're taking 800,000 Robertos and saying, instead of you being able to have a career where you can make money and have a family and live a good life and pay your taxes and do everything we all want to do, we're basically telling them to go out on the streets and survive. How's he going to make money? So we're actually almost in a way incentivizing criminality, incentivizing a way of life that none of us would want to live, simply because we want to take away their status that allows them to attain a lifestyle.
Or maybe
that we
even
all
worse, Jeff, and we may be saying to them, we're going to put you back on a bus. Or
Right.
We're going to send you
That's
back
right.
from where
Absolutely.
you came.
That's right.
And
Or in a cage somewhere.
You're now 19, 20? 20 years old. So for the last 15 years, he's been here in the United States.
Right.
This is the home he knows. And we're going to put him back on a bus and say, good luck. Go back to some place that you haven't been in 15 years and go figure out if you can find a life, find an education, find employment, all the things that his parents came to this country for.
Right.
Because there weren't those opportunities there. Was it the right thing to do at that time? That's questionable. That's for another group to decide. But kids like Roberto are here now.
That's right.
And it seems somewhat unfair to blame the kids for being here and to jeopardize their status and their future.
Well, it's completely unfair, and we're supposed to be a compassionate country. Obviously, that is changing. And, as we look ahead to the next election, I don't know if we'll have a decision on DACA before then or not, but as we look ahead to the next election, again, there's so much going on with this administration that things like detention camps and the policies that are coming out on immigration, we're not even paying attention to. And the cruelty factor, there is a real cruelty factor going on, and it's not going to get better as we move into 2020 if the current administration stays in power. And I really can't imagine what my own mind would be like as I'm going through college, as I'm doing everything I need to do, everything right to make a life for myself and my family, and know that at any moment that carpet could be pulled from under my feet and I could literally be sent tumbling down into peasant status. I mean, that's really what we're talking about here in my mind. And so Roberto, I don't know how you deal with that on almost a daily basis now with the rhetoric that's out there and with the real possibility that DACA could be rescinded.
Well, you try to become as educated as you can. You try to take advantage each and every day of the opportunities that are here. Because as you said, you never know when that carpet can be taken from you. And all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation in which you've tried to put away in the back of your mind for so long. But while we're here, while we can, we're going to continue to learn. We're going to continue to try and be contributing members to this country to the best of our abilities. Because it's really hard to try and worry about the things that you cannot control. I can control what I can control how I performed on my final exams yesterday. I can't fully control the decision that the Supreme Court takes here within the next few months. But I can also control the knowledge with this issue of those around me, of the people that I love, of the people that can vote. As a dreamer, as a DACA recipient, I cannot vote. I cannot vote on the issues which impact me directly. But the people in my work can. My professors can. A lot of the students that I come to school with are overage and can vote, so I can influence them so that they can make those decisions for me because I cannot.
Right.
But in the meantime, I can't sit here and worry.
One thing you said that is even crazier about making Roberto sit here and worry is, and it just hit me when we noted the fact that, he could be put on a bus, sent back to Mexico, and I have always tried to educate people because I believe the more that people start to understand our actual immigration, like the state of it, the more people are going to change their opinions. And what's the reality is these 800,000 DACA recipients, every last one of them that hasn't already ever been put in removal proceedings would be entitled to that. Now, why does that matter? Well, the idea that we're going to take away this status and employment authorization from a group of 800,000 very deserving people is, okay, so then what are we going to do? Put them into removal proceedings? Let's be clear. There are more than 600,000 pending cases in our immigration courts right now. There are people, I have a client who was issued a notice to appear in immigration court in July of 2016. The court didn't send him a notice for his first hearing until November of 2017, and that told him his very first hearing, very first one, would be on September, I think it was 3rd of 2019.
Wow.
How are you? There is no way to put that many people into removal proceedings, period, end of story. And that's why the Obama administration drew this bright line around this very deserving group of people, because you can't feasibly do it. And if you can't feasibly do it, then why would we want them to be here without contributing and being people like Roberto are and working?
Right.
Well,
exactly
that raises this whole question. So, there's an administrative question that says, well, we can't really end DACA because we don't have the administrative capability of adjudicating all these cases. But isn't there a more practical and human kind of consideration that says 800,000 people, a lot of them like Roberto, who are doing the right thing? They're going to school, they're working, they're paying taxes.
200 of them here.
Yeah, we got 200 of them here at UNT Dallas, and a whole lot more of those in our community surrounding UNT Dallas.
problem is I haven't seen Trump make a single decision based on practical human considerations. And so,
Right. Well, even away from the administration, because I think, Roberto, you bring up a really important topic, and that is you can't impact this issue yourself because you don't vote. Right. You don't have the right to vote in this country. Right. So it's up to people who do have the right to vote to adjudicate this themselves in the ballot.
Absolutely.
To vote for people who are taking a more judicious evaluation of DACA and overall immigration so that people like yourself can continue to be the good guys in our society.
And that's why conversations such as the one that we're having today, and UNT Dallas has given us the voice to voice our opinions in this manner, that's why these conversations are so important. I want to assume that there are a lot of individuals out there who, if they were to know what the DACA program is, who it impacts, and who benefits from it, if they were to know the truths of it, they would be fueled to vote for an individual which is going to represent the needs of the DACA community or us in accordingly. It would influence them to vote for someone who can represent us. And so that's why it's so important to have these conversations, to be open about it. I used to live in fear of people realizing my immigration status because of what could happen. I realized I was mistaken to do that because I was keeping important information from those that can make decisions for me. I want them to know who I am. I want them to know the way in which the DACA community is impacting this country because we need you to make those decisions for us. But sitting here hiding my status is not going to help the issue at all, you know?
Yeah, we need people to see, people like Roberto, to see that he's not a drug dealer, he's not a criminal. Our commencement speaker at graduation last year, Hector Robledo, undocumented, a dreamer, but a Newman Civic Fellow, meaning his involvement in the community and this campus was so overwhelming. They made him this national prestigious award. He was just in Washington, D.C. At the last Newman convention representing UNT Dallas. Again, 200 right here. We hold voter registration drives a lot on this campus, so watch our social media, look for emails from voter registration is going on. And I encourage people on this campus because people may not even know who DACA recipients are, like you said.
Right.
You may not even know. The more you get to know who they are, the more you realize that these are people who just want to make a good life in this country. They were brought here not under their control again as children. And so I encourage everyone to vote. And even if you are not into politics or you don't think you want to vote or you think the government's so messed up that it doesn't matter which side you vote for, whatever, think about this issue and cast your vote for somebody like Roberto who cannot cast his vote, and think what his future can be if there is no DACA protection for him. Again, we're talking about someone who is getting college educated to have a degree, who very, very real world possibility that he could be reduced to having to work in this country illegally or being deported to a country that he really doesn't even know. So I encourage everyone to take your vote very, very seriously, whether you are involved in politics or not.
And Jeff, I urge everyone on campus and in the community to get to know Roberto, but also to get to know some of the other dreamers who are on campus and off campus, because these are real human beings.
That's right.
We start to think about them as statistics, as this kind of person or whatever the rhetoric is. Get to know the human being here, and see if you can't find it in your heart to really understand their situation, and then vote your conscience.
That's right. And I'll tell you one other quick little story here. So at UNT Dallas, Dr. Mara Vaughn started a course here 3 years ago called Spanish in the Community. And it's a free course held, I believe now it's held twice a week for people within the community who are green card holders, so legal residents, right, to come who want to become citizens. And we have UNT Dallas students take this course, and they become mentors and teachers for these community members who come in to learn how to take the naturalization test, right? And that class has grown each year. And just last week we had graduation. I believe it was up to 70 people graduating in that class. And these are community members who are coming here after work, sometimes missing work, to come here and take that class because of their desire to be American citizens. And that test can be very intimidating to take.
I couldn't pass that test.
Exactly. There's a lot to it, and there's a one-on-one interview component to it, and so our students are teaching community members how to take that test, how to pass that test, so they can become citizens and then get better jobs that have health benefits and so forth and so on, and be even better contributing citizens to the country.
You know, Dan, as we think about this whole issue, what do you think our students and our faculty and members of the UNT Dallas community can do or think about this issue?
I think that first and foremost, one, we talk about getting out and voting, but even before that, like I said, our congressmen, senators, nobody is willing to say I'm against the Dreamers, right? Making those calls, letting our people that represent us know that, hey, you got to fix this. Why not fix it before the Supreme Court makes its decision and put the minds at ease of all these people? And it's not necessarily responsive to that question, but one other thing I wanted to note is you mentioned get out and get to know these 200 Dreamers. What's crazy is you probably have no idea who those Dreamers like
you
Roberto
probably already
are.
know them.
Yeah, exactly. Because, Roberto's just like any U.S. citizen, right? He speaks like a U.S. He's been here forever. And so people don't realize that, they have good friends and there are good people in their lives that are these Dreamers because they've always assumed they're citizens. And so, yes.
Excellent. Well, been a great discussion here, fellas. Just an incredibly important topic and one that we cannot discuss enough and is going to continue to be in the news. And sort of as Dan said, people sometimes think they can't make a difference, but you can. Call, email your senators and your congressmen and let them know your feelings on this issue. And with that, Roberto Garcia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having
Dan
me.
Jividen, UNT Dallas law professor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Co-host Greg Campbell. And once again, this is Urban Advantage Podcast, the voice of UNT Dallas.
And the Southern Dallas community.
Sorry about that, Greg. Thank you for listening to the Urban Advantage Podcast, the official voice of the University of North Texas at Dallas and the Southern Dallas community. To listen to past episodes, check us out on Apple Podcasts or at untdallas.edu/urbanadvantage. And remember, blaze your trail. So always big things happening at UNT Dallas. We recently had another graduation, fall 2019 commencement, with some 400 graduates. That gives us over 1,200 graduates since last fall. So UNT Dallas continuing to grow, produce career-ready graduates who are going off into the workforce. Big news coming up, UNT Dallas Trailblazers. How would you like to be called UNT Dallas Trailblazers fans? Not just fans of the university, sports fans. That's right. We are attempting to bring intercollegiate athletics program to UNT Dallas. Students of UNT Dallas, it is now going to be in your hands. Coming up very soon, you'll be needing to watch your email for instructions on how to vote and vote for athletics at UNT Dallas. And, you can be the group of students that start what would be a great thing. Every university has an athletics program. UNT Dallas, we want to become that full, complete university. Bring athletics to UNT Dallas. So students vote yes. You will see that coming up very soon.
Big things happening down at Redbird Mall redevelopment. In the news, UT Southwestern taking 150,000 feet to build their new facility down in Redbird. Going to be another major service and activity for the Southern Dallas community and in great proximity to UNT Dallas.
Hope everybody had a happy holiday season, a happy new year, and we will see you back here next time on the Urban Advantage.
The Urban Advantage Podcast is a production of UNT Dallas and recorded on campus in Southern Oak Cliff. Our hosts are Jeff Kaplan and Greg Campbell. Our production team is Jared Horn, Shania Anderson, and the voice talents of Dean Boyd. If you like the show, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and follow at UNT Dallas on any social media. For more information or to reach out, head to our home at untdallas.edu/urbanadvantage.